Thank you so much, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for having us here, Laughing Matters, and me, Lydia. I'm going to talk to you today about the value of entertainment at your events. Now, why do you want to have entertainment at an event? It's a valid question, but it engages us. Sorry, a little technical difficulty. Next one. It engages us. It excites us. Well, it's going back a little bit too far for me. There you go. It enables the learning process and it increases the retention of what we've learned. So anything that engages your senses excites you. And I'm going to show you two slides. They both contain the exact same information, but they are presented in two very different ways. Now, I don't want you to try to read the next slide. I want your reaction to it as well as the slide after it. So let me ask you, do you want to get your information from something that looks like this? No, right? Or something that looks like that. It's the same information, but it's delivered in a variety of ways, with pictures and maps and linguistics and colors. So anything that engages our senses excites us and makes us want to learn more about it. So as meeting professionals, you know that you get a much better response when you tell people that they're going to come listen to something exciting. You get more participation than if you tell them they're going to, did I go backwards? This is all new. Oh, too far. So if they're going to see a lecture versus if they're going to come see a band or an improv troupe. So what I promise you here today is that I will not lecture you for 25 minutes. Are you a little relieved? That's okay. Well, maybe you were looking forward to a nap after lunch. I'm not sure. But that's how your participants feel when they hear that there's going to be entertainment at the event. So you not only increase your excitement, you increase the buzz and you increase the attendance. So let's talk about engaging the participants once the event actually begins. I'm going to talk a little bit about appealing to them through their senses and through their different intelligence or different regions of the brain. So I'm going to give you a few facts at the top, but then we're going to demonstrate and we're going to work together all as a group and show how we actually experience that. So the brain it's got different regions, and scientists have been studying it, neuroscientists, trying to figure out how do we learn? What part of the brain changes when we learn something? Well, I will cut to the chase. We don't know. And neuroscientists are a little bit humbled and embarrassed to admit this, but they really shouldn't be. I mean, the brain has 100 billion neurons. So there is no way to experiment at this time with the technology that we have right now with a living brain. You can't isolate the factors, you can't watch the stimulus and see what part of the brain changes. But what we can do at this time is take MRIs. Okay, and MRIs are a 2D picture of the brain, but if you take enough of them, you can make a 3D model of the brain. And through this 3D model, you can measure different parts of people's brains. So you can see if there's a difference in the thickness of someone's cortex or a difference in their parietal lobe. And it turns out that after examining several of these models, people who have a certain skill, that are adept at a certain thing, do have differences on average. For instance, musicians have a larger cerebellum on average, Bilinguals have a larger lower part of their parietal lobe. So while you're looking at the outside of the brain here, I'm going to take you inside the brain, to the top of the brain stem, to the hippocampus. And if you're really good at navigation, your right posterior hippocampus, believe it or not, is slightly larger on average than anyone else's, or those who are not good at navigation. So another way we can study how the brain works and how we can do the things that we can do, learn skills, make things happen, is to look, quite honestly, at the brains of those who are deceased. There was this man in the 19th century, and the only word he could say was the word tan. He could make no other words, but they could tell that he could comprehend because he could follow instruction. He tried to communicate with his body, but all he could say was tanned. Well, when he passed away, they noticed the severe damage to the front left part of his brain. So what we know from that is that that part of the brain is responsible for speech, specifically forming the words with your mouth and making your vocal cords work. So we can tell these differences in the brain give us certain skills or show evidence of certain skills or lack of skills. And another very well known to this date way we know that the brain works in different ways with different intelligences is Howard Gardner's had this theory of multiple intelligences. How many of you have heard of the theory of multiple intelligences? Oh, really? Not that many? Oh, well, this is exciting. I get to tell you about it. Basically, people learn better in different ways. So, for instance, I'm a visual learner. So if you present something to me visually, I get it quicker. And some people learn kinesthetically, which is through the body. Some people learn logically or musically. I see people nodding. They know this to be true. And something Greg was talking about earlier was something we learn interpersonally when he was talking about how does a person learn from within themselves what they want to do intrinsically. And then something that Roger was talking about earlier about eye-to-eye meetings are better. You've got to get face-to-face. Well, that's interpersonal learning. So we're going to discuss how those multiple intelligent paths work the best for learning from entertainment. Because that is the beauty of learning through entertainment. It teaches you through all of those multiple intelligences. So it teaches you through interpersonal, connecting to someone's experience, or through musical, or through linguistic, or through visual, or through kinesthetic, getting you to move your body. That's how we learn. Now, the problem is people tend to latch onto that and say, well, I just learn visually. Well, you don't just learn visually. That's an error in logic where you're oversimplifying your learning. So while your primary pathway might be visual, your secondary pathway will be music or all of them. You could learn interpersonally. It's not to say you don't learn anything through those other pathways. And as a matter of fact, the more ways in which you learn something, the more areas of your brain that have those bits of data. And so the more you truly learn the material. And I want to quote Judy Willis, if I can find that quote. I don't see it right now, but I hate to misquote somebody. But basically, she's a neuroscientist turned educator. And what she says is that the more places in your brain that data is stored, the more quickly you can pull up that information with a single cue. So that is truly learning and not just rote memorization of something in just one part of the brain. So one of the ways that we learn is through music. Music is entertaining. It gets you in a certain mood or emotion. Now, how many of you listen to a certain kind of music when you're working? Maybe not exactly this, but you need something upbeat. And how many something else when you're relaxing? Right? It gets you in that mood, that emotional state that makes it conducive. And then we've got cooking or dining. You want yet something else, rock and roll before he goes out and exercises. So what it does is get you in a particular emotional state. That's why we pick pre-show music. It's why we have certain music at events. It's why when we walked in here, they had Justin Bieber going. I'm not sure what that was supposed to do. But it's upbeat and it's light and it keeps us going. And it also, if you know what your client's goal is as a meeting professional, if you know the goal, and then you take that goal and use the type of entertainment that helps the participants attain that goal, you've enabled learning. So another way we enable learning is through stories, right? I see more nods. Stories come to us in all different forms. They are entertainment, but they come to us as books, as movies, as plays, as commercials, as lyrics can tell a story. Stories are in so many things, and we love to learn by them. Now, we're going to demonstrate for you in a little bit learning through storytelling and how it's exciting. But before we do, I want to talk a little bit about this emotion, humor, because it turns out that the most conducive emotion for learning is happiness. So they did a study, of course. I did do all my research, and it turns out, I'm going to quote them directly. Zach Stamber with the American Psychological Association says that research suggests that humor produces psychological and physiological benefits that help students learn. And I'm a little short on time, so I'm not going to go into my other quote. But even students who were primed to be happy before a math test did better than those who were, of course, negative, but even those that were neutral. So it turns out your brain is hardwired to learn better when you're happy. So we're going to do a demonstration for you now of how entertainment can teach to all those multiple intelligences. And it's okay. You can laugh. And you might learn something. So here, in closing, I want to say that the neuroscientist Judy Willis tells us that when the fun stops, the learning pretty much stops too. So thank you all for having us here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia and crew. That was awesome. Give them another round of applause. It's like a nice show. And I think that's also another opportunity where we can intertwine some things that are local and fun into our meetings and